Hey guys and welcome back. I am PrimeRose and this is my channel. As you already seen a couple of videos ago, I went to Porto Santo for a couple of days. I tried to film as much as I could, but there is a problem with Porto Santo. It is so windy, but so windy, and it was hard to bring sometimes the drone and take some footage out of it. Anyway, I did some hikes there, but for today's video I will just show you my highlights from Porto Santo. But before that, if you like my videos and content, please remember to click that subscribe button. Okay, let's do this. Number 1. As obvious as ever, the beach. To think about Porto Santo is basically to think about its beach. It's about 9 kilometers lime beach. So the sand is basically made out of shells, corals and calcareous algae. It's not only white sand that you see there, sometimes you see some parts with dark gray sand. That is due to the volcanic rocks that also exist in Porto Santo. Porto Santo sand is a result of the erosion of eolianites, which is limestone sandstone. And this is an effect that occurred in the center of the island. For example, if you go to Fonte da Areia, you can find places there from these limestone sandstones with almost 40 meters thick due to erosive process, the wind, and also the run out water. All of those effects are responsible to bring the sand to the south side of Porto Santo. And this sand lays on top of a rocky base called in Portuguese lajedo. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, Porto Santo means holy harbor in English, so you know. And it is a known fact that due to the physical chemical properties that the sand has, it can be used as therapy for muscles and bone diseases. Number 2, if you're in the village or just a little bit high, you can always see almost around the island, you can see this church. And this church is intimately linked with Porto Santo's history. That's because this is one of the oldest buildings that exists there. We know that it was built before 1933, but we actually don't know exactly when it was built because due to prior to activities, the informations were lost. What we actually do know is that this church was destroyed in 1812 and was finished being rebuilt because they started rebuilding but they didn't finish, no money maybe, and they only finished rebuilding in 1951. This was one of the places where the islanders used to hide themselves from pirate invasions. So the patron from this church is the Nossa Senhora de Graças, which is the Lady of Grace, and the party is celebrated in the 15th of August. So we are almost to that date. Number 3, Serra de Dentro. So remember the refugees that I was talking about that used to hide themselves? If we wind up just a little bit, Porto Santo and Madeira were victims of pirate attacks. Madeira was mostly robbed from gold and other valuable objects, while Porto Santo, since it was lacking on water, food, and other type of precious items, what they actually stole from Porto Santo were the people to become slaves. The worst attack that happened in Porto Santo was in 1619, where the pirates killed or enslaved so many people that only 18 men and 7 women were able to escape this attack. It was and it still is very hard for Porto Santo to cultivate whatever it is. Basically, the whole island was used to create terrains for agriculture. If you go around the island, which basically takes 20 minutes, you can still find a lot of walls created for agriculture that are just abandoned and aren't being used. If you go to some specific places like the Terre. You can find on the west side that there are also these walls, but they were in fact rebuilt for reforesting. So what is special about Serra de Dentro? Serra de Dentro has an extensive deposit of greenish toned clay, and this clay is the result of an alteration of underwater of volcanic clastic materials. And this place is of both regional and national relevance due to the uniqueness of this clay, nature and chemical composition. Number 4. Pico du Castelo. Remember the pirate attacks? They asked for help from Portuguese king and plans were made, but unfortunately they only stayed as plans and nothing was actually made until Portugal lost its king, and there was no heir to the throne besides one cousin that was the king of Spain. He said, okay, no worries, I'll take care of Portugal and Spain and I will not try to change anything, I will just have both crowns on my possession. So the Philippine dynasty lasted 60 years until Portugal decided to kick them out. But during the 60 years that the Philippine dynasty was here, that was something good for Madeira, because the plans for fortifying the islands weren't anymore just plans, and they started actually building. On one of those fortresses were on top of one of the most iconic mountains of Porto Santo, which is Pico du Castelo. And the fortress that was there was called Forte do Pico. Eventually, we don't know exactly when, the fortress was destroyed. And a few decades ago, in 1982, one of the cannons were discovered while they were reforesting the mountain, and a landmark was made to remember the fortress that no longer is there. But nowadays it's a really good viewpoint from Porto Santo. By the way, if you decide to go there, you can do a little hike all up until the top of the mountain, where you can actually see some of the ruins from Pico du Castelo. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance. It was always windy, or the days that were more windy were clouded and raining. I didn't have the best chance to get to Porto Santo, let's say it that way. Number 5. Pico Ana Ferreira. There's an old quarry in Pico Ana Ferreira where you can see a prismatic disjunction with almost perfect columns. So this structure was created basically due to the contraction stresses that generated there while the magma was cooling down. This usually happens in a volcanic conduct. And this is the resulting rock that survived the erosive action while the material around already disappeared. You can basically see this effect all over the crest of the mountain, but more on that on the next episode. Number 6. Pico das Flores. This is a good viewpoint to be because you can see Porto Santo's village, you can see the Cow's Islet and the Ferro Islet. And if you're lucky and it's a good weather there, you can also see Madeira. You can find here a great area where you see a lot of planted trees. When you came to Porto Santo before in the 70s, 60s, there was almost no trees here. They started in the 80s reforesting the island, and this was one of those places. We have now a lot of areas in Porto Santo where you can find trees. Of course, there are trees that we knew already belonged there, so they are used to surviving in a harsh environment already. All in all, Porto Santo is a really great place to come, and for the ones that like a little more adventure, you can basically walk the whole island if you want to. But the ones that just want to relax a little bit, you always have the 9-kilometer beach there for you to enjoy yourself. Most of you, my YouTube audience, already know how the Porto Santo Line works. But this is for the other part of my YouTube audience that doesn't know exactly what they are to expect. First of all, there are 2 ways to get to Porto Santo. One is through airplane and the other one is through a ferry. The airplane takes about 10 minutes while the ferry takes 2.5 hours. Of course, ferry is cheaper than the airplane. What you might not know about going on Porto Santo Line these days. For you to go to Porto Santo, you need a quick test. First of all, you need to buy your tickets, whether it's online or if you want to go to the shop. On that paper or PDF, you will have that ticket number. And that ticket number will be necessary for going to the next step, that is, you need to go to Madeira Safe and make your registration. Everyone that goes on that trip needs to do the registration. You need to do this exactly 1 week before you travel. You need to do the test 3 days before you go on the trip. For you to mark the test, you need to book 4 days in advance for them to have the test for you. And that's it. Then you can go to Porto Santo. Oh, and if you're in Porto Santo, you have to visit the Lambeca's ice cream. Well, I admit it's not the best ice cream that you will have. I do admit that. But coming to Porto Santo and eating at least one Lambeca is a tradition that we Islanders have since generations. I've already heard so many stories about my grandpa going to Porto Santo with my mom and eating at least one Lambeca while they were there. It's not expensive, it's not the best ice cream of your life, but it is a tradition that we from Madeira have. You can always leave a comment down below which is your favorite place in Porto Santo or in the tropical island. You can also smash that like button, and if you haven't already subscribed yet, you can always do that to see the upcoming videos. I'll see you next time. Bye!